Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 285. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is my new wave of G.I. Joe ReAction figures from Super 7. Now, I forget which wave this is. Wave 5 or 6, I think. Anyway, I've done reviews for every wave thus far. So if you're curious to watch any of those past videos, make sure to go find them on my channel. But for today, I'm going to be talking about the brand new figures that I got from Super 7. Technically, I bought them from Big Bad Toy Store. So it took a little while for me to get them up here in Canada. So these things have been released probably for a good 2 months for a lot of other folks. But for me, my pre-orders, I had to wait for them to come into Big Bad, and then I had to wait for them to ship all the way up to me. So it took a little while for me to get to them. But I am excited about this wave. There were 6 new figures, which is a reasonable size wave. When Super 7 first started putting out these ReAction figures, the waves were sometimes, I think, 9, 12, sometimes even larger, because they would always include a trooper, and they would give you variants of the trooper. So, like, for example, you could get the Cobra trooper with black skin, white skin, tan skin, and then when they did the G.I. Joe Trooper, same thing. And then they gave you the version where you could get him with a mustache or with a beard or clean shaven, and it just got to be a little crazy. And initially, I wanted to get every single variant, but considering these things cost about $30 Canadian, I can't really justify it just because one guy has a mustache and one guy has a beard. So I've been kind of cutting back a little bit. Now, this wave here is exciting because it's all new characters. One of them is kind of debatable, and I didn't actually order it. I kind of regret it. I would like to have it. I think it's a nice looking figure, and I might still get it later if I have an opportunity to maybe buy it on sale. I know Super 7 has sales around the holidays quite a bit, where they might say if you buy 5 ReAction figures on our website, you get one free, things like that. And I often don't get to take advantage of those sales because I'm kind of impulsive and I buy everything as soon as it comes out. So I've kind of taken that, the thought process of, you know what, maybe I hold off on buying all the sailors with all the beards and all the mustaches and all the different skin tones, because maybe I can buy those later when they have kind of a bundle sale. So the figure that I did not buy is the Cobra Commander Funhouse robot. Now, this toy looks really cool. It's Cobra Commander, and he's got a really nice looking metallic sheen because he's supposed to look like kind of a tin soldier. And he's got new sculpted parts, so he's not just a repaint of the Cobra Commanders that I already have, because he does have these kind of little circular joints on his knees and elbows, so he's supposed to look like a tin soldier, and he's directly from an episode of the G.I. Joe cartoon, which is the primary inspiration for these ReAction figures. But considering that I already have 4 or 5 Cobra Commanders, I have him in his standard baby blue. I have him in kind of a dark navy blue. I have him in glow in the dark. I have him in his Python Patrol outfit. It just got to be, it's a little much, and it's hard for me to justify another $30 for that figure. But after I didn't purchase it, I have seen some other people post it and everything, and I'm like, oh man, that metallic sheen looks really nice on him. So yeah, I might get him eventually. But for now, I'm going to talk about the other 5 figures. So yeah, first up, General Hawk. So very cool. This is the leader of G.I. Joe. And he is, I wouldn't necessarily say a favorite of mine, but when I was a kid, me and my brother Doug, we shared a bedroom. We collected all of our toys together. So every time a new wave of G.I. Joes would come out back in the 80s, the back of the packaging featured all the characters in the wave. Now this only has the 6 figures, but back in the day, G.I. Joes had like, I don't know, maybe close to 20 figures that were out for the whole year. So me and Doug would split them down the middle, and we would do pixies on who would get what. So yeah. I have kind of a more of an attachment to the characters that I owned personally as a kid. I still really like some of those characters that my brother Doug owned, like Duke and Destro and Cobra Commanders, like some key characters. But when I owned them and I played with them myself, I have a little bit more of a stronger connection. So General Hawk, he was one of my characters. I really love his militaristic look with the kind of the bomber jacket there, the camo pants. One thing that's kind of neat about this figure, which I think is a first for the ReAction figures, is he has a removable helmet. Because these figures are kind of simple with their 5 points of articulation and their simplified sculpts, for every other figure, the helmet has just been part of the head sculpt, whereas the 80s figures, the helmets usually came off and stuff. But yeah, this guy has a removable helmet, so that's pretty cool. I don't know how I will display him, actually. I guess I'll have to see how he looks once I take the helmet off. But yeah, you see the card art there. They have this like nice original card art for every one of these figures. Now, it's reminiscent of the card art we got in the 80s, but no disrespect to the artist. I would say not nearly as good. And I don't know if it's supposed to be. The 80s artwork had kind of a photorealism to it. These ones here, maybe because they are supposed to be more inspired by the cartoon. I don't know. I think I maybe would prefer, actually, if they just kind of drew it in the cartoon, like the Sunbow style. Here, it's kind of like I don't know. It's just like a shittier version of the artwork of the 80s. So, it's not bad. It's just, I don't know. There was a very high bar set by the 80s artists. So, anyway, the card art is cool. And then you get the file card on the back, which is pretty standard. Just like G.I. Joe figures of my childhood. So, yeah, very cool. So there's Hawk. We'll take a closer look at him in a few minutes outside of the packaging. Next up, we've got another G.I. Joe. This here is Barbecue. So he is the G.I. Joe firefighter. And this was another guy that I had as a kid. He was a favorite of mine. I love that he had that helmet that covered his face. He almost looked like a medieval knight. And I like the bright orange. You know, he looked really unique in my collection. And he's got the file card there. And the funny thing about him is he was a character that was featured in the cartoon, and you actually get to see him without his helmet on. He had this kind of like blonde or red kind of curly hair, and he was kind of a goofball. So it was always kind of interesting to see how these characters got fleshed out in the cartoon sometimes. But yeah, so he's very cool. Very reminiscent of the toy I had as a kid. Again, artwork, decent, but not as good as the old stuff. And the next guy here, this one's kind of interesting. So this here they call the G.I. Joe Pilot. Now, they do have a still from the cartoon on the back. So clearly this character was featured in the cartoon. Maybe for a millisecond. Maybe he was featured multiple times. I don't really remember. In the cartoons, they did oftentimes have these kind of background characters just filling a scene. But they never had, like, anything to do. Because the G.I. Joe team is supposed to be a team of elite soldiers that all had unique code names. Like Hawk, Barbecue, Snake Eyes, that sort of thing. You didn't really get these support troops very often. They just kind of showed up every once in a while. And so I don't remember the specific episode or episodes that this guy was in. But it's a cool look. And I do really like that Super 7 is kind of filling a niche that Hasbro never did. Is they didn't really give us these nameless troopers. But Super 7 has given us the general G.I. Joe trooper. They've given us the sailor. They've given us the, like, combat mechanic or something, and now they're giving us these guys. They gave us the MPs. Lots of interesting support staff for your G.I. Joe headquarters. And yeah, this guy looks pretty cool. And this is the only version of the pilot that exists thus far. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if in the future Super 7 decides to re-release this figure with, say, an African-American skin tone. Maybe they'll release him with his mask off as opposed to on. Like, that's the kind of thing they seem to like to do, to be able to, like, make the most out of a new mold that they invested in. But for now, they just gave us the one version. He's got his little mask on and everything. I think he looks great. So, yeah, I'm happy with him. And his artwork is completely original, like, not based off of anything else, because there's never been a figure of this guy before. So, very cool. And now I have my Cobras, my bad guys. So it was 3 good guys. It would have been 3 bad guys if I had got Cobra Commander. But anyway, here is Buzzer. So So he is one of Zartan's Dreadnoks. Again, another character that I had as a kid. This whole wave, I guess maybe this is one of the reasons I was most excited about this wave, is because all these characters were characters of mine that I had as a kid. And yeah, so Buzzer, I really like. He was a fun character from the cartoon. And he looks great here. And I will say, it was kind of funny with these figures. I got this wave of G.I. Joe ReAction figures in from Big Bad Toy Store the other day. In the same shipment, I got these Godzilla ReAction figures, which I reviewed in my last video. Now, it's just that my wife is not into this stuff, but she's very supportive of my collecting. She never questions me on it, or anything like that. She's just like, whatever makes you happy. But sometimes she does scratch her head when I'm buying my 100th Spider-Man action figure. And she's like, do you really need another Spider? So when I got this box of toys in, I was excited. And what I often do is I call my buddy, I work from home, and my buddy Brian from work, I'll call him on on Skype, and I'll do an unboxing with him just to be like, man, do you want to see what new toys I got? And so I called Brian, and I was about to do my unboxing when my wife walked into the room, and she's like, oh, you got some more toys? And so she kind of sat there and watched me do my unboxing, which normally she doesn't pay much attention to what is coming in. But I was pulling these Godzilla figures out, and I started off by pulling out like Megalon, and I was like, look, I got another Godzilla figure. And she was like, oh my God, how many Godzilla figures do you need? And I'm like, well, he's not a Godzilla figure, like he's under the Godzilla umbrella, but he's a whole different villain, and I don't have this character, so he's something unique. And she was like, okay, fair enough. But then the very next figure I pulled out was actually Godzilla, and no joke, this is probably my 50th version of Godzilla, and she knows that, so she was kind of like, okay. And then I pulled out Buzzer, and I was like, so here's Buzzer, he's one of the Dreadnoks. And then the next figure I pulled out of the box was actually the G.I. Joe classified 6-inch version of Buzzer, who happened to come in the same shipment. So again, that's the kind of thing that was kind of like, because pulling two different versions of the exact same character out of the same box at the same time does kind of, I think, make her question my judgment about where all my money is going. So yeah, I love Buzzer. This is a cool figure. The classified version, which I will review in another video, is also a cool version. But yeah, I'm probably good for Buzzers for a while. Anyway, the last figure I need to show you in the packaging here is the Crimson Guard. So this is a very cool figure. We previously got Tomax and Xamot, the leaders of the Crimson Guard. So yeah, of course, we needed this guy. But yeah, this is another character that I have a lot of versions of because he has recently come up in the classified line as well. So I bought a 6-inch version of him, and then I bought the repainted 6-inch version of him, where one of them had a black mask, one of them had a silver mask, but otherwise it's pretty much the same toy. And now here I am buying him again, and this is probably, I don't know how many Crimson Guards I have in my collection now, and all the different scales and all that stuff, but easily 30. So I get it. I get the criticism. It gets to be a little much. But I'm not going to buy 30 of this figure. I just want one of the ReAction style. He is his own unique style. Like, he does not look like the vintage ones that I had as a kid in the 80s. And that's not a knock on it. He looks more like how they appeared in the Sunbow cartoon, which had its own style. And yeah, I think he looks really cool. I like the artwork. Again, looks totally different from the 80s artwork. This is probably my favorite artwork of this wave, to be honest with you. And yeah, there's a little shot of him from the cartoon on the back. And yeah, very cool stuff. Anyway, so that's them in the packaging. So we're ready to open these guys up, take a closer look. And yeah, let's do that right now. So first up, we're going to take a look at Hawk. And outside of the packaging, immediately, I think this guy looks pretty great. Yeah, like very cool. Like the deco is really nice. It's very reminiscent of the Hawk I remember that I had as a kid. The jacket's a little bit lighter. Now I don't know, that might be more true to the animation. But yeah, I am used to him having a darker jacket, but that really doesn't matter that much to me. But yeah, you can see for accessories he has that little pistol, which, not much detail on that thing, but it fits in his hand all right. And before I try removing the helmet, I'm a little nervous about doing this. Like, I don't know if it's going to scrape the paint or if I'll get it to fit back on as nice as it looks right now once I take it off. But he does look good in it. Like, it fits more like a real helmet. Like, maybe before I take that off, while it still looks perfect, I'll bring in the original figure that this is based on. So the very first Hawk came out in the very first wave of G.I. Joes in 1982. But he was just wearing a plain green, like kind of olive green uniform. He was nothing particularly special or unique. But then in 1986, they gave him this figure where he truly kind of distinguished himself as something different. He has an entirely new sculpt, brand new head sculpt. He's got like kind of wavy hair where before he had like a just short blonde hair. He actually shared a head with another G.I. Joe named Short Fuse. So if he's going to be the leader of G.I. Joe, it makes sense that they gave him his own unique head sculpt and his own unique weapons and helmet and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I loved this figure when I was a kid. But you can kind of see how the helmet fits a little goofy. Like, that was a problem with a lot of those vintage helmets, is they sat kind of big on their heads. Now, one unfortunate thing, every time I go into my vintage G.I. Joe collection, because these guys are not on display, they are just bagged up. Every time I go in there, more and more of them are broken. I have 2 General Hawks. This guy is obviously broken, and so is this one. So, if you're familiar with the old 80s G.I. Joes, it was just a like kind of a black little rubber band called a washer that held them together, and they withstood a lot of like vigorous play, but it seems like when you stop playing with them, the elastic erodes, because like I hardly had any G.I. Joes break on me when I was a kid, but since I stopped playing with them, more and more of them break all the time. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer to find that both of my Hawks are now in pieces. But yeah, and I know you can fix those relatively easily. You can go to the hardware store and buy these washers. I think they sell them in like the kind of plumbing section. But I have so many G.I. Joes that are broken. Like, probably not 100, but maybe 60. For me to buy all these washers and then have to try and unscrew these guys and replace the washers, I just don't really know if it's worth the trouble, because they're not going to go on display, and chances are they'll sit in the bin and then they'll just erode and break again. So maybe someday I'll fix them, but it's not a priority for me. Anyway, all right, so let's take his helmet off. And there you can see he's got the kind of wavy brown hair, some pretty bushy brown eyebrows, and you do see that there's some paint wear on his hair, and that's from the constantly taking the helmet on and off. And that's what I hope doesn't happen with this guy. And I might as well bring out the kind of modern 4-inch version of General Hawk as well. So you can see it says his name right there on his badge, Abernathy. So yeah, this was a nice update of Hawk. Although I always felt this one looked a little too young. Like, this guy looks like he has some years on him. This one here, I don't know, he looks too fresh-faced. And again, the helmet sits a little big on his head. So even though these 4-inch figures were improvements in a lot of ways, there were still some ways where the proportions were a little goofy. Sometimes the added articulation made them look a little weird. Now, this Hawk figure, he was released fairly early in the line. I think if they had released this figure maybe a year or 2 later, this guy would have come out a lot better. But anyway, it's not a bad version of General Hawk. Anyway, so this guy here, let's check him out. If we get this helmet off, and you know what? I'm sure I've seen pictures of this guy with his helmet off. But this feels, it's on there really good. I don't think I'm going to remove it. Which, take that as a strike against this figure. If this is supposed to be removable, it's on there very tight. I'd be really worried I'd damage him if I take it off. So I'm just going to leave it on there. yeah, that's kind of unfortunate because I was looking forward to seeing how well he looked without the helmet on and everything. But yeah, I'm just going to leave that right where it is. And yeah. Now, even though these figures are definitely simpler as far as articulation goes, they don't have any knees, any elbows, anything like that. It is noticeable that like his goggles, they've painted them. Look, he's got black goggles with blue lenses and a little white star, multiple paint apps on his helmet. Whereas the the vintage one, that I love the vintage figures. Don't get me wrong, but I do find it a little funny that every time you go online and read about ReAction figures, there's always a bunch of people kind of shouting them down, saying these figures suck compared to the vintage ones. I don't know why anybody would want these shitty figures. But when you look at that, like his helmet definitely could have fit better. It definitely could have had some paint apps. So yeah, say what you will about these ReAction figures, but I think they do some pretty neat things with them. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased with General Hawk. So next up, we've got Barbecue, and he looks pretty great as well. I always loved the look of this guy. I've never seen a real fireman that looks like this. I don't know if they wear these outfits anywhere, maybe in the military, but this guy always looked more like a medieval knight to me than anything else. But yeah, you can see for accessories, he has got his backpack with these, I guess, foam canisters on there. And then he's got his little gun, and there's a rubber hose that connects them. The backpack's kind of interesting. It sits very low on his backpack compared to what we're used to with the vintage figures. And it's got a very big peg. And it doesn't stay in there great, especially when you tug on it with the rubber hose. But anyway, he looks good. Now, here is the vintage Barbecue. Now, he is still in one piece. At least this one is. I do have another one here that is in pieces. But anyway, you can see the resemblance. This guy here. Like, I will say I prefer this look. They've kind of changed the shape of the helmet. They've kind of changed the coloring for the ReAction figure. Again, probably to look more like the animation. So I appreciate that they're being faithful to the Sunbow animation. But I really do love the look of this figure. Anyway, so he's got his little foam tanks on the back. He's got a rubber hose that connects to a little gun. I'm terrified to move this figure around because he does feel a little loose, like his elastic could go anytime now. Even just putting his little gun in his hand, I was terrified that his thumb could break because that has happened to me a few times. The plastic has gotten pretty brittle. And even putting him on this display stand. I hauled out my vintage Lady J figure not too long ago to do a video. And when I put her on a stand, her heel snapped off. So you just never know with these old figures what kind of shape they're in. But anyway, and then I'll bring out the modern 4-inch Barbecue as well. So you can see they kept the look of the 80s figure as far as the helmet design. And otherwise, everything's pretty much the same. Foam canisters on the back, rubber hose, got his little gun. So yeah, I've always loved Barbecue. They've released them in a couple of different color schemes over the years, but the classic orange and gray one is always going to be my favorite. It's the most interesting, the most unique. And yeah, I think this figure looks really good. Now, if I had my wish of like what they could have done to make this figure better, it would have been cool, especially since this is based on the Sunbow cartoon, if he had an alternate head where you could put on the head with the like blonde curly hair. I know that's asking a lot. That's not typically something you would get with a ReAction figure, but we've got so many Barbecues over the years, and it would be kind of cool just to have one where you could see his face and his hair and everything like that. So that would have been neat, but that's not really a knock against this figure. That would have been pretty atypical. So yeah, cool little figure. So next up, we've got the G.I. Joe Pilot, and he's pretty cool. He's relatively plain. His outfit is pretty much the same shade of green. Like, there's clearly two shades there, but they're very close. So, a little boring, but that's to be expected, I suppose, for the support staff. You wouldn't want to give this guy a really dynamic costume when he's just in the background of the animation. You'd think keeping them simple and easy to color would be the name of the game. So, makes total sense here. I don't have any figures to compare him to because, as I said earlier, there was never an action figure of a generic G.I. Joe pilot before. So this will be quick and easy. He's got a little silver gun. I think it's probably the same one that Hawk had, and we've probably seen it with other figures too. His mask there, so that connects into his chest. That's not removable or anything. So, as I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if they make a version of this guy with the mask off and change his skin tone and everything like that. Now, one thing I did not know before I opened him up is that his little visor here lifts up. So that's very cool. Again, that seems sort of like above and beyond for a ReAction figure. Because typically these guys are pretty simple. And they don't give us a whole lot of extra features and stuff. But I would say having a visor that slides up like that is pretty damn cool. So, yeah, simple design, simple paint job, but cool and unique. And these are the kind of characters that really make collecting the ReAction figure line a lot of fun, because you're not just buying the same things that you've been buying for 40 years already. You're adding some new stuff to the line. So, yep, I highly recommend this guy. So next up, we'll take a look at Buzzer. And I think this guy looks great. Like, he looks very true to the animation. And I actually think it's, one of the best that he's ever looked. It's very, very cool. And he has his chainsaw. It's very interesting style of chainsaw. It almost looks like it'd be like a nail gun or something. But I'm not the best to comment on tools. I am very much a toy guy. I am not a tool guy. So I don't know. Maybe that's based on a real chainsaw, but it looks a little weird to me. But yeah, I love his little ponytails, sunglasses. It's got that like kind of, I don't know if I'd say reflective, but that metallic silver paint on the lenses, which is pretty cool. Yeah, not too shabby. Now I will bring out my vintage Buzzer here. Now, like General Hawk, I have two Buzzers. Here's another Buzzer, and he's also in pieces. This guy is also in pieces, but at least he can. Some of these guys are so loose that you can't even get them to just sit here like this to take a picture of them. But at least this guy here, his knees are stiff enough that he can hold his own weight here. But you can see how these guys are similar. But I will say about this vintage figure, I always thought he was kind of ugly. And like, not that that's a bad thing. There's ugly people in real life, and the Dreadnoks were, they seem like the kind of people that very well could have been ugly. But it just didn't really look like how Buzzer appeared in the cartoon. I wouldn't describe Buzzer in the cartoon as being an ugly guy necessarily. So even though this figure is fine, I do really like how this one looks more true to how I know the character from the cartoons. Now, you can see they've simplified the design a little bit. Now, again, that's probably because the animation design was simpler. This guy here, he's got a bunch of little medals on his vest, and he's got a tattoo on his arm. But that would have been difficult to animate, so they've just simplified him here. Now, I will bring out the 4-inch version as well. So here you can see he's got a big chainsaw. His chainsaw's got a lot more detail on it this time around. But otherwise, the design is pretty simple. Here they've given him a little bit of a goatee, which is something different for him. You can see both these guys have the silver glasses. It almost looks like they've got welding glasses on. But yeah, pretty cool. I do like the colors on this guy too. They're a lot brighter. Like his vest and his hair and everything. Even though having hair this blonde is maybe a little unrealistic. This guy here, his hair was just maybe a little too bland. It matches his vest almost too perfectly. So I kind of like having the bright blonde hair. Now, I don't normally bother to bring out 6-inch figures for comparisons. But as I said, I happen to get 2 different Buzzers in the exact same box from Big Bad Toy Store. So I'll just bring out the 6-inch Buzzer here since he's handy. And there you go. So you can see he's got pretty yellow hair as well. Not quite as yellow as the ReAction figure. The design otherwise carries through pretty consistently. This guy has removable glasses for the first time. So here he is without his little goggles on. He's got some chest hair and everything. If you want to see a review of this figure, tune in for my next video, because Chad and me, we sat down and we reviewed all my latest classified figures, so we're going to talk about this guy in that video. So they're obviously very different types of figures, but they both have their own merits. I really love the simplicity of these ReAction figures. I think they're pretty great, and this guy is, I don't know, one of my favorites, I think. Now, one thing I guess I'll mention that's kind of a weird design, and perhaps it's just true to the cartoon. I don't know. I could find a still shot from the cartoon, but it can be difficult to find like a full body shot or a whole 3D turnaround or something. But you see this guy, the vintage figure, he's got kind of, I don't know, a leather piece covering his crotch, but then in the back he's just got jeans on. Whoops, this guy here, he just has straight up jeans, front and back. With the classified figure, he's got that same kind of leather piece to protect his crotch, but then he's just got jeans in the back. I'm not sure what this guy's wearing. Like, it almost looks like he's got a leather diaper on or something, because he doesn't have jeans on in the back. It's full brown leather, you know, with this one strap that goes around. It's like, yeah, it's like a weird slip-on leather underwear. It's kind of strange. But otherwise, this is a pretty cool figure. And lastly, we'll take a look at the Crimson Guard. So the Crimson Guard is, I don't know if I would say he's one of my favorite troopers, because I feel like I could say that about almost any Cobra trooper. I love so many of them. But the Crimson Guard, considering that the original came out in 1985, he was one of the earlier trooper types, and he was a favorite of mine. I really did love him back in 1985. You know, I have so many like new versions of him from over the years, but I've always liked the Crimson Guard. Whenever they change him up, it's always fun to get a new take on him. This is a very classic looking version as far as the helmet goes. The backpack, that matches almost exactly with the vintage figure. The gun with the bayonet, again, very true to the vintage figure. And yeah, if there's one thing that's a little different with this guy, I would say like all this blue trim. That's probably unique to the Sunbow cartoon, and I don't think I have any other Crimson Guard action figures that have all that blue on them. Plus his head is a little rounder. I found that with the Cobra Battle Android Troopers as well. I have so many Cobra Bats in my collection, dating back from the vintage line to the like 2002 line, the 4-inch modern line, to the 6-inch classified line. And when I got my first Cobra Bat in the ReAction figure line, his face just seemed round, and it was a little different. I wasn't used to seeing the Bat with such a chubby little face, and that's sort of how I feel with the Crimson Guard here. He's got a rounder head than I'm used to. Now, I don't think it's a bad look. In fact, I kind of just like that it's something different, because I don't like feeling like I'm buying the same toy over and over again. So the blue trim, the different shaped head, that enhances this figure as far as I'm concerned. Now, as far as the vintage one goes, here is one of my vintage Crimson Guards. He's very loose in the knees, but at least he is all in one piece. I have, I think, 4 more Crimson Guards here, all loose in bags. Yeah, it's a real shame. You know what? Maybe I do have 100 broken G.I. Joes, because it seems like every single one I pull out is broken. Sucks. Anyway, now for the modern Crimson Guard. I have so many to choose from. Even the 2002 line of figures, they changed up the Crimson Guard. They gave us removable helmets, and they gave us kind of new designs. I just have so many Crimson Guards, I couldn't be bothered to grab them all. In my modern 4-inch collection, this is how I store my Joes. So I've got all these guys in little baggies, and then they're in a big bag together. Now, I have so many Crimson Guards that they don't all fit in one big bag. I have one bag full of red Crimson Guards, and then I have another bag with all the variations. So, for example, here is the black kind of shadow Crimson Guard. Here is the Python Patrol Crimson Guard. So why don't I bring him out for a quick comparison. So here is the Python Patrol Crimson Guard from the 4-inch line. And, you know, I probably could have dug out one of my red ones so it would be a little bit more apples to apples. But the other figures look the exact same as this. They were just painted differently. So you'll notice that these guys, they have different shades of red. This guy is a much like deeper, darker red. I would probably define this one more as crimson. This one less so. The modern ones, I think they were probably a darker red as well. But one thing I never liked about these, the modern 4-inch ones, was I thought their heads looked too small. Like when you look at that, this part here, which is I guess supposed to be like the breather, compared to where their eyes, the eye slot seemed too narrow, not wide enough, and this seemed too long. Like it just made me imagine, like, what does this guy look like if you take his helmet off? Does he look like Bert under there with a big long head? No, compared to the vintage figure, I always, I thought they kind of dropped the ball on the design of the 4-inch one there. This guy has a much rounder head, and it's just much more believable for me to imagine a human head inside of that helmet. Anyway, this guy here, I think they've done a good job. Again, it's a unique look, and I think the proportions look good. Anyway, very solid figure. I'm pretty excited about him. And I imagine they'll probably re-release this figure in Python Patrol colors eventually. And yeah, I'm totally cool with that. I would be happy to buy this guy up in whatever colors they decide to give me. Okay, so that was my review of the newest wave of G.I. Joe ReAction figures from Super 7. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave me comments below. Anyway, I'll see you soon. I'll be back with another video. Until then, ciao.